welcome. This is tutorial part 2 on hand rendering a perspective. So part 1, we got to the point where an underlay was created in Trace. And part 2 is going to take that underlay and actually now show new construction. This method combines the old knowledge and skills of constructing perspectives with the approach of a thumbnail perspective. So we need both a photograph of the existing site and some knowledge of how perspectives work. So let's go a little deeper in how we take the existing site and show changes to it accurately, but yet also quickly. So I'm going to screen share. Okay. So what you see here is a sheet of trace on top of a light box. This 8.5 by 11 photograph is the same one we worked with in video 1. When you turn the light box off, check this out. There's a switch under here. It's actually much less contrast. It's a little difficult to see the photograph clearly. I have already done some of the tracing. You can see that. When I turn the light box on, much easier. So I'm just going to finish tracing. This is the existing site, and what we see is a house with an attached garage. There's some landscaping around it. In the foreground, you see quite a lot of gravel. That is no good for a client in a wheelchair. So we're going to fix that. And usually a project starts with assessing where the site and any possible buildings are. Are they useful? Are they in good shape? Do we have to tear anything down and start over? Those are the types of questions you might be asking. So in terms of tracing, I want to point out this is a bedroom wing. This is a courtyard with a little brick wall in front of it that has a very beautiful little curving top. This is a brick wall that wraps around the lower level of the house. And you can actually see that it's been outlined here also. There's a drip edge at the top. You can also see there's a very important line of the roof ridge. There's a gable in front of the attached garage opening, a smaller gable by the bedroom wing. You can see a beautiful conifer here. I'm going to go ahead and add the trunks of a nice little garden with aspen trees. They're primarily hidden behind the conifer, but we'll at least mark where the trunks are. This is a shrub the whole family is allergic to. And you can see this attached garage has a concrete apron in front of it. I'll just show this. So we're looking at gravel from the pavement by the apron to the garage all the way out to the paved road. There's 80 feet of gravel. Now imagine that you're in a wheelchair. How the heck are you going to be able to safely go from pavement by the garage across 80 feet of gravel to a roadway in case of emergency? It's not safe. We're going to fix that. We'll create an ADA walkway with 2 wheelchair transfer zones. The clients also want this existing courtyard patio to be converted to an outdoor physical therapy and community space. So I am going to take this drawing off the light box. I think we're ready to do that. The way you can tell is you lift the corners And you can now see that I've pretty much drawn what needs to be drawn. So I am leaving this car out for now. I want to focus on what's happening here. And so to do that, I don't want the car blocking our view. Okay, we'll give this a minute to go back into focus. So what we're looking at, I apologize, the camera angle is slightly tilt. We can try and do this a little bit. There's also quite a high latency, a lag. So we may switch over to a slideshow. However, I want to show you guys this. So when you are getting ready to add the new construction, you need to put your drawing on your board with a T-square. The verticals actually need to be vertical. So if you look, I'm going to fix anything that's not vertical. Because when I was tracing, I did not have my drawing on a board. The other thing I want to show you is this. So these windows we're going to keep, but in the proposed patio plan, they're going to turn into a small window and a door. So we are now looking at the sheet of trace, and you can see that I have checked. This is what was traced from the light box. I have now checked to see if the verticals are really vertical. That is important because the building is standing up against gravity. So here's one more. When I was tracing this from the photograph, my verticals weren't necessarily all vertical. You can also see that I traced most of what is there in the existing photograph. So we have our gravel driveway, the conifer. You can see the trunks of the aspen trees that are behind the conifer in this view. You can see the garage. I removed this car from the view because I want to focus on this courtyard. The car is in our way. It can always be put back on this side of the garage later if we so choose. All right, so let's identify what kind of perspective this is. You know that the ground line is not horizontal, and the roof line is also not horizontal. So that tells us, among other things, this is a perspective. You also can see there's a courtyard. You can see this corner of the courtyard. This also tells us we have a perspective. You can see a little bit of the side of the house here. It tells us it's a perspective, but what kind? So if we have one vanishing point, it's a 1 point. If we have two vanishing points, it's a 2 point. I am going to point out we've actually got two vanishing points. The first one you can find, I'm going to go ahead and draw it right about here. And let me show you this also. You can just see the corner where this strip edge turns this corner and then it lands right here. You can just see it right there. So I know this angle. I'm going to see if I can stand up without killing the drawing. This angle takes us to one vanishing point. So I'm just going to do this. So that's a guideline weight. Now this roof angle is also going to take us to the same vanishing point. Now the vanishing points are not always in the same place. This drawing has been sketched a few times. And let's look again very closely at this drawing. We have 1 point here. It's up here actually. And then we have 1 point back here. Let's look again and make sure I'm coming as reasonably close as possible. So I'm going to redraw this line. And that is going to change this vanishing point, I think. look at this one. Let's do it right on the drawing. We've got you, and we've got, you. So it looks to me like the vanishing point is right there. Yeah. Okay. I think we found a vanishing point. So sometimes you have to look at this carefully and play with it a little bit. But once you figure out where your vanishing points are, you're in business to actually start constructing the new pieces of your drawing that you want. So keeping the photograph handy so you can refer back to it, very useful. So we have this vanishing point, this line coming to here. We have this one coming to here. Let's just check that once more. We've got that line coming here, right? I can even extend it. We've got this one. See? Now it looks like it's right there. We're going to go with that. So here is your first difference. An old school constructed perspective, you know, is going to be very accurate. I think this is our vanishing point right there. And were I constructing this from an existing set of multi-view drawings, such as plans, elevations, sections, there would be no guesswork. Taking it from the photograph, you have to extrapolate a little bit. So just know that. So now we have removed the car. We have traced what we want. Let's talk about what else we're going to change. This allergy shrub the whole family is allergic to, that's going away right now. So I just erase it. Okay. Gone. Now, the pretty brick wall here that you can see light shining on right there, we have to remove that wall in order to expand the patio. So that wall is now gone. I've erased the shrub in front of it and there's no wall. What we want to find now is where is the surface of the patio? Where is the ground? And so come back to your vanishing point right here. Look at this. You can see the corner, the front corner, right? It's this corner right here. You can just see on the photograph where that meets the ground. I'm going to draw this. And you can see as well this back corner. Now, how are we going to find this ground line? All right, we have a second vanishing point. Anytime you see a corner of a building and you can see a couple sides of it, you have two vanishing points. So that means we've got one on the right side of the drawing, which is right here. Now we need to find one on the left side of the drawing as well. Let's see if we can find a vanishing point on the left side of the drawing. I'm going to take a larger triangle. Okay, this is one line, right? I'm just going to make another guideline. This is another. Look at that. The ground line where the bedroom wing meets the wall is another. So I do another guideline. Let's see what else we've got. This is another here, right? Where the drip edge goes. So when I take away the triangle, we can't see this vanishing point. The one to the left is actually off our page. It's completely out of our view. But we have these other lines to work with. So I'll go back to my little triangle. Check this out. Again, we want to find out, this is ground. We know this is ground inside the courtyard. Where's the ground line? Here by the house entry. We can't see it in the photograph. It's blocked by the allergy shrub and the wall. So what you do is you take your triangle, put it right here, which is where the ground is based on the rest of the drawing. This is where you have to start extrapolating. I'm going to draw the ground line like so. Now that is based on the angle of these other guidelines, which I can see here. So this looks fairly convincing. So now we have already rather quickly removed the allergy shrub, we've removed the car, we've removed the existing garden wall, and we're now actually seeing into the courtyard that we want to study. So this is your first piece right here. We have accomplished exposing the courtyard. Now we can start adding to it. We've identified a vanishing point here. We know there's one at the left, but it's outside of our viewpoint. But we do have these guidelines we can now work with. All right, let's keep going. Now, you need some more information with this method. We know from ground to the top of the wall at the north entry is 9 feet. So I can write that down, right? We also know, you know this from your north entry elevation, that the new patio, this new patio is 1 foot. So if this top of the wall to the ground is 9 feet, that means from the top of the new patio to the top of the wall is only 8 feet. That's really useful information. So how do we figure out these heights without being able to measure it? Because we can't use a scale on a perspective. We use proportions. Let's say that you want to draw a 6-foot tall person. So this is 4 feet right here, right? That's half of 8 feet. This is 2 feet. This is about 6 feet. So if you want to say, am I getting that right? This is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep. If you want a person who's 6 feet standing on the new patio, this is about how you do it. So we work with proportions. In this case, we know this is 9 feet. So let's divide it, just eyeballing it, into roughly thirds. So this, if we have a little scale figure standing on the ground, there's our scale figure right here. But we want our little person to be standing on top of the new patio. So we have to take this guy and jump him up 1 foot. Now, how do we know what 1 foot is? We figured out that 6 feet is 2/3 of the 9-foot wall. Easy. Well, how about this? Check this out. From the top of my head to about my collarbones is right around a foot. I'm a little bit less. I'm 5'5". A 6-foot tall man would be right around a foot. So that means the head, this round blob that I drew, is about 1 foot tall. That means I can do this. Check that out. What I did was I took the size of this oval, which represents the head and the neck sitting on the shoulders by the collarbones, and I approximated it right there. So can the camera see this? Right about there is where I believe the new patio surface is. Now I come back to my vanishing point and I run the triangle through the point where I believe the new patio surface is, and I do this. And that's a little too tall. I missed my mark. Let me do it again. Ah, got it. All right. I'm going to erase the line that is the boo-boo. You want your eraser shield handy because you can see how the lines are close to each other and you don't want to mess things up. Now I will probably take this larger triangle and do the same exercise. I want to find where from the corner of the building the patio meets the corner of the garage. So there's going to be a line that connects from here going over in this direction. For that one, I need the vanishing point to the left, and it's off my sheet. Can't see it fully. So I will do this. I will line up this big triangle with the point where I believe the new patio roof is and rock this triangle until I believe it's at a good angle relative to the various guidelines. And I think I might have missed it slightly. Let's take another look. Let's do one more line here. There we go. So now we have this line with our person standing on it, but we actually believe the higher line, which is just visible here, is the true new surface of the patio. So I'm just going to redraw my scale figure right about there. I'm going to erase the old one because he's no longer accurate. We don't want a scale figure standing on the ground. We want our little person to stand right on the new patio. So does this make sense, you guys? So what we did was, to get to this point, we took the original drawing, traced it, in this case using a light box, removed the car, removed the allergy shrub, removed the garden wall, looked very, very carefully at this angle, which is right here, and I just drew it coming down towards the ground line. We see a ground line here, right here. I then was able to find a vanishing point at the right, which allowed me, again, to do this. And that allowed me to show where the wall of the house meets the ground. We then drew a scale figure based on our understanding of the wall height. Our scale figure is approximately 6 feet tall. That scale figure gave me roughly the size of 1 foot from the head of the scale figure. I used that to say this is probably how tall the new patio is. I then used these other lines here to do my best to orient my triangle correctly, extrapolating to draw the new patio surface. Then you go back to your vanishing point at the right, and we can now show the surface of the patio. I'm going to do this again. And we know that the new patio is longer than the old patio. From your proposed patio plan, we now know the old patio was 16 feet. This is the garage entry right there. And this is the house and the bedroom wing, right? So this was the existing patio, and it was 16 feet. You know that from your proposed patio plan. This is 8 feet, and this is 8 feet. And then this was that garden wall we took away. The new part of the patio is an additional 10 feet. So the entire patio now equals 26 feet long. That's our new proposed patio. How are we going to show that? Look at this foreshortening. How are we going to estimate 10 feet? This is really cool. Check this out. If we find the middle of this wall, we can then measure 8 feet plus 8 feet. And we can study the foreshortening and approximate our patio. So if I make an X on this wall, you're going to see something really cool. Okay, Look at this. This X actually marks the center of this wall. This is the old school technique for finding distances on perspectives. So you make your X, this is your center line. But if you look closely, this distance appears to be less than this distance. That's because of the foreshortening in our drawing. We can use this. So if this is 8 feet, and then this little bigger space is 8 feet, right? Then probably 10 feet is going to line up right about where the edge of this window is. So I'm going to draw a vertical line. As it turns out, it lines up pretty well with the edge of this window on the bedroom wing. Let's look closely at this. So this guideline marks right there, that marks the center of this wall. 8 feet, another 8 feet. This is a little bit bigger, and then again a little bit bigger because it's actually 10 feet, not 8 feet. And now we can start to draw the entire patio, can't we? So again, I line up my triangle. I can now look and see we've got a ground line extending out. We've got the new patio surface extending out. This is the new patio surface. I can darken that a little bit. Okay. We have a 6-foot scale figure standing on top of the new patio. And I think this is fairly accurate. We've got the roof here. Let's see, this is an 8-foot high. Let's look again at this little guy. We know that this wall is 8 feet. So half of that wall is 4, half of that is 6. So yeah, there's our person. That's about right. Makes sense. We're using rules of proportion, knowing that head and neck are close to a foot. We're using the known height of this wall from the new patio surface being 8 feet. We checked our scale figure. It looks pretty good. We found the center of the bedroom wing wall right there, which allowed us to extrapolate out. I'm going to move this over slightly. Allowed us to extrapolate out a 10-foot addition on the patio. And you can see that I'm adjusting and fine-tuning. That is part of this process. And you want a drawing that looks convincing, which this is now feeling about right to me. So let's draw the front of the patio. So the way we do that is we look for these lines again, these vanishing points. It's going to be about like that. And then the new patio is still about 15 feet, 3 inches wide. So that's about 2.5 people. Let's do this. We're going to use our vanishing point from the corner of the garage. Right there. This is ground. Did I get that? Yep. And then check this out. When, by the rules of perspectives, if you want to show people in the foreground and the background, the head, you say to yourself, my people are all the same size. That allows you to set up this. Give yourself a little line right through where the eyes are, which are roughly in the middle of the head, roughly. This line, I can now show a person out here standing at this end of the patio. His feet come down farther because he's closer to us, but the head is on the same level. They're the same size person. So how cool is this? We now have a beginning understanding of our drawing. And now I'm going to try and show. I have the feeling that wasn't quite right. Something like this. We're going to do our best here, guys. I think grade should be here. This should be there. And now head right about there. We again extrapolate with the lines we've got and do our best. There. Now, you can use your T-square, and you should, for the vertical lines. So for this front corner of the patio, I'm going to do that. All right. So I think we now have a patio. 15 feet 3 inches is not quite it is not quite 18 feet, right? It's a little bit less. If we have a 6-foot person, there would be 3 people like side by side by side by side on the patio. So we want to have about 2 people's worth. So 2.5 people. So I'm just going to use my lead to measure. This is now proportions. We're using proportions. So here's my person at the front of the patio. That's pretty close. So I want 2.5 of these. So we've got 1, 2. Yeah, it's a little big. I'm going to pull it back a little bit. About here. So I'm fudging things, aren't I? So I'm going to check my vanishing point again. Redraw the line. And there we go. All right. And now it's time to erase the lines we don't need. So we want to erase this line and this line because those are actually underneath the new patio surface. We cannot see them. There is, in your course shell, if you're taking my drafting class, a PDF file, and you can look at the slides of these steps. For people who have never drawn perspectives before, maybe you've read about it, we are using the rules of perspectives, proportion, and vanishing points to help us construct this one. So now let's look. What have we got? We've got a scale figure back by the door, back by the house entry, another one by the front of the patio. We've extended the patio 10 feet. It's relatively accurate. Because we've been using this vanishing point and lining the triangle up for the things that we see on this side, it looks convincing. They're all going together to the same vanishing point. We found the center of this wall and realized, okay, that's 8 feet, that's 8 feet. We think this is another 10 feet. Again, proportions. So we are ready now to locate the columns because remember, if we're looking at the north entry elevation, we have a cover over our new patio, right? So this would be the bedroom wing, this would be the garage. We have a column here and a column here. We have the new patio surface. There's a longer cantilever to the right, right there, because we wanted to leave the existing door alone. And then we wanted to add a couple doors and then leave the existing window alone. So we need to locate these columns and figure out how high they are and locate the roof. So let's have some fun with that. We know a couple things. We're going to work again with our understanding of the design from your other drawings. All right. This is the existing doorway partially hidden by the garage. This is a chunk of brick wall. These are the existing windows and doors. We're going to bring this one all the way down to the patio floor. right? And turn that into a pair of doors. So those doors are going to be 6 feet wide. We have our person standing in front of them. So now you can see these doors are 6 feet wide. We have a 6-foot person standing in front of them. And then we have this window here, which we're going to keep. It has a frame around it. But we know from the proposed patio plan that for various structural reasons, we end up with a column in front of this window and a column next to the door. So I'm going to go ahead, let's look at the front of the patio and locate the front columns first. So the column at the left, right here, is going to be about 2 feet from the edge of the patio. So that's going to be about 2 heads worth. So let's say that it's going to fall right about here. I'm drawing a center line of where we think that column is going to be. So here's our head. There's about 2 heads. There it is. This is roughly 2 feet from the edge of the patio. We know that's where the column is again from your proposed patio plan. On this side, it's 4 feet 6 inches, and that allows plenty of space for both the garage eaves and the existing door. So 4 feet 6 inches, that's 4 feet is about 2/3 of a 6-foot person. 4 feet's about here. So what happens if I do this with my lead? I can use my lead to measure visually what I think 2/3 of a person height is, and this is probably it. Then I can do this. So it's probably going to be right about here. So if this is a 15-foot wide patio, if that's 2 feet, this should probably be twice that plus some change. So I'm going to move it over here. Are you beginning to see how this works? We're extrapolating. I'm going to do another center line, which I believe represents the 2 front columns. We also know that the distance between these 2 columns, again, from your proposed patio plan, is 8 feet 9 inches. So this needs to be bigger than a person laying on their side, and it is. This distance needs to be about twice and some change this distance, and it is. And then this is the smallest. It's probably pretty good. All right, so we think we've now located the columns. Again, working with the rules of perspective and proportions. 6-foot tall person, 1 head roughly a foot. We want 2 feet here for the first column, 8 feet 9 inches here for the second column, or 4 feet 6 inches coming back. So just eyeballing it, working with proportions and our scale figure, which we first figured out back here, and then moved a person forward using the horizon line, which I like to also nickname the eyeball line. This is right where the eyes are. See how this is building on itself? Now, where are the back columns? We know this is the door. Let's see what happens if we use our vanishing point to give ourselves, some kind of column grid. What happens if we do this? This lines up with the vanishing point. We know that this column has to be a little bit in front of the wall to allow for the eaves. So I'm going to propose that this column is right here. Now let's look at where we think this one might be. If we use this vanishing point again, what happens? Same thing, it needs to be down in front. In this particular view, I think it has to land right about here. Because it has, in fact, it has to land farther over. It has to clear the eaves. It usually, we know from the north entry elevation, it's going to block part of the window. So this is very interesting. I'm going to erase the line I think is wrong, which is you. And so we think this is the front column, and we think this is the rear column. They look halfway convincing. Now, how do we know how tall they are? From section 1, you know. So here's section 1. We know the front column to the ground, not counting the patio, but to the ground, the design limit is 13 feet. This one, the design limit is 10½ feet. 13 feet is a little more than twice one person's height. So from here to here is probably pretty close to where that column is. So now there's another 2 feet, right? 2 head heights, give or take, because we have 18-inch glulam, 6-inch rafters, and then roof decking on top. So I'm going to go back and try and extrapolate. I'll use the larger triangle for this. If we've got this one here, but we can't make it perfectly horizontal with our T-square because of foreshortening, I can do this. Try and line it up based on what's going on with where we think the vanishing point might be. And up here, do the same thing. This one I can run across. And then we know that the patio roof is going to stop at the edge of the patio over here. It's going to go to there. And then it's going to stop here. So it's going to stop right about there. Okay. So we just drew the front of the patio. I'm just going to estimate where that 6 inches is so I can show the thickness of the roof. And again, are you seeing how this works? I'm extrapolating based on the underlay. I was able to get that ridge beam fairly accurate. And so to draw the top of the thickness of the patio roof, I do it this way. We know the rafters are notched. There are the notches. We know that it's time to sharpen my lead. You guys notice the light is changing? It's the afternoon light. You can tell my sweater has appeared to change colors. And you can see the quality of light over my shoulder changing. Okay. So we think this is rafters and roof assembly, glulam, column. So these columns are 6 inches by 6 inches, and the glulam is 18 inches by 6. So we're just going to do this. Here's one, and here's the other front one. Am I measuring? No. I'm eyeballing. There we go. But this is roughly half of a head height, so it's probably fairly close. All right, let's go back and figure out how tall the columns are back by the house entry. So you know from this section, they're 10½. We know that we have a new patio, which is 1 foot above grade. So this one really is about 12 feet, right? About twice our person. The back one is going to be, instead of 10½, from the patio surface, it's going to be 9½ So it's going to land about a foot above where the roof starts, about a head's distance above where the roof starts. So we're just going to do that. Do you see what I did? Here's the head of our little scale person back here by the, he's got his hands in his pockets. So this is the head of the scale person. So I just went to the column and said it's about a head height above the roof. about a head height above. That gives me about 9.5 inches because we know this is 8 feet. So we come up another head-ish. We hit 9 feet, wiggle it up a little bit more, and you're right around 10.5. So this is the thumbnail sketch part of this technique. And now I'm going to take, again, the big triangle and try and figure out what these need to look like. And see if I came sort of close. I think I did. I'm going to go ahead and draw from here to here. So this back part is going to disappear behind part of the garage wall. But this part we're going to see. And we have now, this is the column. We have another 2 head heights worth of glue lamb and rafters. So now we start connecting the dots. Let me show you this. This dot represents the top of the roof. So it would do something like that. But this represents the bottom of the rafters, and that we're really going to see. This roof is sloped. It's shorter at the back and higher at the front. So we're trying to show a very gradual roof slope here down to this column. I'm going to show the column now. It's going to start right about here. It's still 6 inches wide. We know the glue lamb is the same width as the column. And the glue lamb is going to be right about here. And now we can connect the glue lamb. Did I get that right? I think I did. Let's look and see. Because this roof is sloped, it's not going to come close really to following. Here's our glue lamb. Here's the top of the rafters. Yep. And now I'm going to try and show that over here also. Now trying to follow a little bit of this foreshortening. Let's say that's where the glue lamb is. And so I can now show the glue lamb to glue lamb right here. And we can show the width of the column. Again, I'm using the T-square for that. Come a little higher. Yes. There's a little cantilever back here. We sort of see that at an angle. Now we need to estimate here. We've got 2 head heights, right? So it's about like this. This is about the 18 inches and the 6 inches. So the top of the glue lamb is about here, approximately. Not using the vanishing point for this, can't. The vanishing point, let's do this a little better. Ah, looks good. The vanishing point only works when it's perfectly horizontal, like a floor or a ridge beam. When you have a sloping roof, you can't use your vanishing points. It won't line up correctly. So again, we're using our rules of proportion. Right? Okay. And now we need another 6 inches to bring this guy back. And we know there's a cantilever. So we're going to try and show the cantilever next. And my guess is it's going to be about right here. I am guessing a little bit on this one. So we do our best to draw it, and then we're going to step back and look at it. Okay. So, sorry, I bumped the camera. what we now have looks fairly decent. We need to show this overhang sticking forward about a foot, but we've got column here and here. We've got one that we can see here and here, a scale figure, another scale figure. We've got our new patio. We've gotten rid of the old things we don't want anymore. This is how you construct using this method. So this works when you understand your construction project. We've all done a lot of drawings. You've already done a proposed patio plan. You've done a north entry elevation, so you know the wall heights. We've done sections, so you know the column heights. From the proposed patio plan, you can also see where the columns are located. So we take all of that information and use it, plus at least basic understanding of the rules of perspective and proportion, to identify a 2-point perspective, identify the vanishing point, and build this out. So you can watch this as many times as you need to. Stop and start it. The next step after this is we want to add the ramp, the ADA walkway, and the edge protection in the form of flower planters. There's also a little patio wall here with steps down, and then the planters here for edge protection, planters here. I'm going to draw this one right now. It's kind of fun. I always envision planters looking like gigantic urns, so I tend to draw them that way. This is designed to be a little less than 3 feet tall so that our person in his wheelchair can use it. And the ramp is going to be 6 feet wide. It's going to be about as wide as this person is tall. I'm going to use my pencil lead again. We can't use a little bit narrower. We cannot use a scale, can we? Because the scale wouldn't be accurate, because perspectives have all that lovely foreshortening, which is why they appear to create the illusion of 3 dimensions. So this pencil lead is now sticking out, sorry, let me move my hand, about as far as my little scale figure at the front of the patio is tall. I rotate the pencil lead on its side and center it right about here. And let's see how close I come, right about here. So I think I'm going to move it over slightly. I'm going to put one guy there and the other guy there. The reason being, it would appear slightly off center because of the foreshortening. So now I'm going to erase the 2 dots that I'm not using, because if you forget to erase stuff you don't need, you may lose track of your place in the drawing. Okay, so now we've got our ramp is located here and here. I'm going to use a vertical line to show the height of the ramp above grade. Has to be 1 foot. We have to have the ramp line up with our patio. So now how long is the ramp going to be? I like to keep rocks here and then have, at this corner of the patio, I like to have a walkway coming out that ties back in to this existing concrete slab. I don't necessarily, in my design scheme, want to pave the whole driveway, although you could. So that means there's going to be something here. The ramp is going to curve back and appear right here. And then it's going to wind its way forward. And I like to have another loading area right here. So this is our tree, remember? And if we put another transfer zone for our wheelchair person right here, roughly speaking, by where the trunk of the tree is, this tree will provide shade in the summer for a person. So that means there's going to be a ramp coming forward, and then there's going to be some winding around action to a sidewalk that ends up here. The other thing that I like to do is have some kind of landscape feature here, creating a buffer zone between where the cars go and where our pedestrians go. So I won't be showing a lot of our ADA compliant walkway along here because of the foreshortening, it will appear to be covered by rocks or plantings here. So we'll see some of it for sure. So this is an extrapolation. I'm going to say the ramp comes down a little bit like this. And then the walkway is going to curve, which was something that in the real world the clients wanted. So where it curves, we see a little more of it. I also like to show planters on the walkway that help celebrate that this is a lovely area for a person in the wheelchair to be. So the planters are going to get a little smaller as they go back towards the house and a little bigger as they come forward. And we'll put some more here. Maybe we'll put one there. So these are just ornamental plantings along a walkway. At this point, you can now see we've actually roughed out the drawing. Remember, your site requires two safe transfer areas. So we have one here, we have one here. This one accesses the existing pavement. We now have also got a ramp up to the patio, and we have planters as edge protection. So I'm going to show this planter. I tend to show mine, I imagine things like cast stone that has a slight texture, and it has rounded edges. So here's a planter, here's a round urn. We now have plants in the planter. So look at that. We're not going to see all of this person, are we? That person now disappears partially behind the planter and the plants inside of it. Interesting, yeah? So I whip out my eraser. I redraw the planter. There it is. I redraw the plants. Maybe some of them drape over the edge. And now what we really see are the shoulders and the head of the person back by the house entry. Here, this is approximately where the drip edge is. And this approximately lines up with a little garden wall that extends partway out the patio, and there's a little gate in it. There's a lot of foreshortening here, so we're not going to show very much of this, but there's going to be a planter here that we do see, right? More plants coming over this way. So now you also realize that part of our view of columns are blocked. Over here, there's another planter that goes to the edge. Let's make sure that line is really vertical. And it is. The line of the gutter wraps around the house and goes down. There's another planter here that we can now draw with plants coming up. So now I can erase some more things we wouldn't be seeing. All right, you got this. So now what we've shown is existing construction. We have figured out how to fairly accurately, it's still, quote, a thumbnail because, we're not constructing it with grids, so forth and so forth. This is surprisingly close. We have columns that are twice the height of a person, 18-inch glue lambs, 6-inch rafters. The roof slopes down. There. There's a little cantilever to show that. So the roof is really going to come down to about here. Yep, more like that, because remember there's a cantilever at the back. It's going to do more like that. And let me erase what we don't need so we don't get confused. So I do not necessarily recommend drawing straight on vellum, even though by now all of you are very skillful. You can see how much erasing goes into this. So I recommend doing this underlay. You can then take your sheet of vellum and lay it over the underlay. We'll give this a moment. There we go. Sorry, I bumped the camera again. I think this is fairly decent. I also think the cantilever is not big enough. We might move this down like that, a little farther. So at this point, I would say, if you have followed along with the video, the next stage of operations is to go ahead, take your sheet of vellum, place it over this, and it can be inked. There are no real surprises in the ink. All you have to do is take your sheet of vellum, create the border around it just as we do. So if you have an 11-inch by 11 by 18-inch sheet of vellum, then you draw your borders. Here's another thumbnail, right? If this is your 11 by 17 sheet of vellum, then you would draw a border. So you've got the frame all the way around the drawing. This is consistent on every sheet of drawings. You always have that frame. This one is 1/2 inch. This one is 1/2 inch. This one is 1/2 inch. But this one is bigger. This one is 3/4 of an inch because we want to be able to use our staples on that side and still see the whole drawing sheet. So there's a binding on this side. So we just make a slightly larger margin. This is 1.5 inches for the title block. So now you can make that border on your sheet of vellum, and then you can take this underlay and move it around underneath the vellum until it looks nice. That's all you have to do. Up in here is where we want to put the existing construction. Same exact process. You each have a photograph that is half the size of the big one. You shrink it down by 50%, trace it up here, and you're ready to go ahead and add that and start inking. So you take your photograph, shrink it by 50%, trace it right here, and now you've got a really cool before and after. They're both accurate. The before is accurate because we've traced it from an actual site photograph. The after is accurate because we have constructed it using our knowledge of the design of the proposed construction and the rules of proportion and perspective and vanishing points. So this is a pretty convincing drawing, you guys. So congratulations. If you do more than one of these, they get easier and easier as you go. And the huge advantage to this is this finished drawing. You'll see a slide at the end for some inspiration. This finished drawing is going to, in my view, look a lot nicer than a perspective from a computer. Let's see if we can find some samples. So you've gotten to this point. You know that you'll next transfer to vellum and ink. Let me see if I can pull up a couple slides for you. So here's some inspiration for you. So this is, we can look right here. The cursor's not showing up as well as I'd like. In the upper left corner, let me rotate this up slightly. In the upper left corner, you see the top of the sheet border and the border at the left. I added a small frame around the existing, and you can see it's labeled existing. That is ink on vellum. You can see that I took the same exact photograph, shrank it, traced it, very simple. And what's kind of fun about this is you can take the canopy of that conifer and wrap it around the frame for your proposed, and then it kind of breaks the frame and it joins the canopy of the conifer in the existing, and it creates a pleasing composition. So then you don't have to do it exactly this way, but you might find you like it. We can look at this. So notice there is no scale, there are no notes, no dimensions. Basically what you see is eagle residence proposed and existing. That's it. So congratulations to get to this point. And I'm going to share another photograph. Let's back up one. And so the question might be, what the heck are these different line weights? Let's go take a peek. All right. So this is basically a drawing very similar to the one that we just finished. This is that ink rendering you saw a moment ago. And I drew it, and then I just started making notes on what the pen sizes are. You can also see that there's now 2 scale figures, not just one. And I'm just going to pause here for a minute. If you would like to screenshot this, these are suggested pen weights. So you can see that the existing house is, the gables are O3s. The roof ridge is going to turn into an O5. The vegetation started at an O1. You can always darken it if you want to. In the lower left of your screen, you can also see a cheat sheet identifying the names of the line weights. And these are micron pens, which are archival quality black ink. They're a joy to work with, and they're very affordable. So I would say go ahead and screenshot this, and I'll give you a moment, and then we're going to roll forward to the next sheet again and just look, where are the line weights stark? Where are they lighter weight? Okay, let's go ahead on back to the next sheet. All right, I just want to show you the top of the drawing so you can really read the micron pen labels. These are the pens I recommend. They're excellent and they're affordable. Waterproof, archival quality ink. All right. So the prior sheet with the trace over it gives you an idea of what pens to use. Let's just look at this. Do you see those line weights? Just take a moment and look. We have more detail on the patio. You see the planters. You see a suggestion of the rafters. You see the planters lining the front walkway. This one is a slightly different version than the one we started. So I show the access to the driveway slightly differently, but they're very similar. And you can see that the line weights don't have a huge contrast, but where the walkway meets the driveway, things appear a little darker. There's a ground line back by the house bedroom wing. That's a little darker. If you look closely, you'll see that those planters are actually showing shadows. The left side of the planters lining the walkway are a little bit darker than the right side. That's because the sun in this image is behind the house. So the sunlight that's coming is shining on the side of those little planters lining the walkway that are closer to the house, and the side that's closer to the road or closer to where we're standing is in shadow. So if you produce this, I think you will be very happy. And huge congratulations. This is a pretty special drawing. If you like this technique, I encourage you to take photographs of other sites and practice. It's all it is. You can also always review the rules of perspective, proportion, vanishing points, and so forth. Once you get more skillful at this, you can do it fairly quickly, probably 2 hours from start to finish. And that's worth the time. That's worth the time. All right. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Good luck finishing your drawing, and I'll see you next time.